Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast. We're talking about motivation, experiences, and we explore the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared, and today we're talking about some of our likes and dislikes of the men's coaching and influencer world that is out there right now. Being podcasters ourselves, we are kind of a part of that, and we definitely have some thoughts on. We've had a wide variety of guests that we've had come on the podcast, and some of the stuff we like. Some of the stuff I don't really like, and we're usually pretty open. I'm always trying to be open about like hearing what people have to say, and so in fact, some people have said to us, "Well, you guys need to push back more on some of these guests." Maybe that's true, but so today I heard a little bit more of some of our opinions on some of the things we do like, and some of the things we dislike about this kind of men's movement / like motivation / world of influencers that we currently are living in. So it should be interesting, to say the least.
Oh, it's always interesting. Well, let's get into it.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information.
And that, my friends, is called integrity. That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
Either you're somebody or you're nobody.
You're not the devil. You're practice.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously, like you said, Jared, you and I in our podcast kind of fits into this, let's say this category of maybe men's improvement and health. I mean, we have some women maybe that listen to the podcast, but I'd say we're mostly men. And the whole podcast, I mean, we talk about lots of different stuff, right? We talk about men's mental health and we talk about aliens, right? We talk about lots of different, and some of it's right, motivation, inspiration, and searching and exploring the world around us. And so all of this, some of it's entertainment and some of it's knowledge building. Mm-hmm. And with that, obviously, yeah, we've had a lot of people on the podcast, and as Jared and I are, I don't know if we're considered middle-aged, but middle-aged men and fathers and working professionals that want to be better and better, then we're constantly kind of seeking ways to do that, whether it's talking with people that proclaim they help people become better, or whether it's listening to, books or, doing study on our own, or learning from our own and others' experiences, is important. I remember there's a saying that says, a smart man learns from his own experiences, but a wise man learns from the experiences of others. I've always kind of liked that. For some reason, I've always been smart rather than wise, and having to stumble through things on my own sometimes, and not listening to others' advice. But so yeah, let's maybe break it down a little bit. How do you want to do it, Jared? Do you want to go like, we each kind of, you share like, I share like, you share like, or do you want to go like, dislike, dislike?
Let's go like, dislike. So maybe let each of us share a dislike first, and then we will go and share a like, and then we'll share a dislike, and then we'll share a like.
Okay. And are all of these ones that you've pulled from communications that we've had with people and interviews that we've had, or stuff you've seen from the industry outside as well?
Both. Kind of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay. You want to go first?
Sure. I'll go first. So, one thing, and I've seen this, this is kind of inside and out, like, some of the interviews that we've done, and even like watching, like, I don't know, David Goggins or something like that, right? He's like, if you're just sitting on the couch, you're just a bum, you're just an idiot, you're just lazy. And so my first dislike about the whole kind of some people in the men's culture is shaming. How it's just like, I don't react well to shaming. Someone's going to make me feel bad. You're just fat, you're just, lazy. I don't really do well to shaming. That doesn't motivate me.
Yeah, yeah.
And if anything, it just kind of makes you feel like, man, I am this or I am that. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of a common thing that I see a lot of times, is kind of a tactic for trying to motivate people is shaming. And I'm not into that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just actually was just kind of realizing that you said that is a huge theme. So many of these, and it's like almost like a tough talk, but it just turns to shaming. Instead of like a motivation and like pick you up type of a thing, it's like almost like a put you down thing. And like you're expecting that person's tenacity to come out and be like, I'm going to prove you wrong. But not everybody has the same level of tenacity. And sometimes when you push people down like that, they just don't have the strength to get back up out of the water. I mean, maybe David Goggins does, but when you say like, you'll know me, son, you'll know me, it's like, okay, well, like he says he listens to people like dissing him as he's running and doing like triathlons and stuff.
Yeah, or he'll go through and he'll pull all the negative comments that he has on YouTube or whatever else. He'll read them and record himself reading them, and then he'll play them back to himself while he's working out. It's like, dude.
Yeah. Some people like thrive on proving others wrong.
Yeah.
But I think for some, it really gets them down, and that tactic does not work. And so, yeah, I think that's a good one. Did you have anything else for that one?
No, that was one that I thought of. I mean, I got a couple more. But.
Yeah. So okay, so this one's kind of big. I wrote a lot of notes on this because I've really been thinking about this for a long time. So I may read some of my notes here because I've had a lot of specific thoughts. One thing that I dislike is this idea that you have to curse a lot to come off as authentic. And you see this almost, it's in the world that we live in is kind of a shock and awe tactics or clickbait. What's the most shocking title that you could put up there so people will click on it? And so this kind of bleeds over into the influencer space, not just men's influencers, men's coaching, but also like the likes of Gary Vee. He's a clear example of this. Where he's got to drop the F word at least 5 to 6 times in every single piece of his content. It's because he's authentic. And
it's almost like entertainment more than authenticity. It's like they're pushing this persona. And I completely agree with you, Jared. One of mine was shock and awe. I hate like the shock and awe thing.
Yeah. And so I think it creates a like like these influencers resort to cursing like a sailor to create this level of impact and emergency and urgency in what they're saying. But really it's almost like a clickbait tactic. And so like when they're trying to create this sense of urgency, it just gets like it gets lost. I mean, if you're if I hear someone say, "Hey, get the F away from that effing thing," I'm gonna like jump back if I hear someone like curse at me like that. But then if I just hear somebody say, "Hey, get away from that," then I'm not gonna be as like jarred away. So like the whole point of cursing is to bring like heavy impact and emphasis to what you say. So my point is that basically constantly using that type of language, constantly cursing, it removes any depth of language that you have. If you're constantly yelling an F word at people and yelling and cursing all the time, then when you actually do mean it and you say it, it has no bearing. It's almost like crying wolf all the time. And so I think it just can be exhausting listening to someone like that, because it's like I can't tell if you're just kind of pissed, if you're super pissed, or if you're just a little bit perturbed, because the way that you're talking has no depth of tonal change or of variation in in vocabulary.
I can't read it if you actually care. Yeah, if you actually care about this or if you don't, because you're, if you're happy or sad, either way, I feel the same way.
Yeah. So I think that is it's just I wonder whether I can relate it. Is that like it's kind of the difference between like if you see a classy woman doing something that's like a woman that is classy can do something that's very subtle and it can be extremely attractive versus some woman who's ripping her clothes off and trying to get your attention. Both ways will get your attention, but one way is trashy. So that's kind of how I feel. Yes. So like this language and this like cursing, it's used to. Here's like another thought process that I have is that like it's used to attempt to convey that a person does not care about being professional, and that their rebellious nature makes them less fake, or because they are not poised, it makes them quote unquote air quotes real. So if you're
is that why Gary Vee wears those ugly beanies all the time?
Yeah, I mean it's just like I saw one. I mean this is kind of down a little bit of a different path, but like he was trying to get into like a black tie affair. He was the speaker. He shows up in like sneakers and like a hoodie, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm here for this thing," and they're like, "Yeah, you can't get in though without a jacket because this is a black tie affair." And he's like, "Well, I'm the speaker," and they're like, "Yeah, you can't get in without a black tie affair." And the way that he like promoted that video, he was kind of just like, "Oh man, look at these uptight people having to bend to me because they're inviting me, and I'm just gonna be so authentic to myself." But the way that I saw that was kind of like, "You're an idiot. You don't know how to dress. You have no class, and the way that you and like that's just."
Well, I almost think it's a matter of respect thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I mean they invite you to come and they're probably paying them money, but
yeah, they are.
I mean it's just like, dude, like
have some respect
your environment.
Yeah, but it's like this faux culture thing where people are like, or maybe it's maybe it's just not the culture that I want to accept. I think that I want a guy to look sharp. I want to look sharp if I'm up in front of talking to people. I'm not gonna talk like a slob and dress like a slob under the guise of it me being real or like, hey man, I'm so real. It's like, okay, well then you really sound like an idiot. Why would I invest money with someone who sounds like a cholo? Much less leans like one.
Oh, that's funny. Elbows up, side to side.
So, I know that this type of like, people kind of get in like that mode, maybe like in boot camps and type stuff like that, But like, I almost feel like it shows that you're unable to communicate without constantly. If you're unable to communicate without constantly using expletives, then to me that shows that you're not equipped to operate in life. How are you going to act when you're speaking to a child or to a woman or to an elderly person or even to another guy? If you can't speak without cursing, then that is not the type of man that I want to be. I want to be able to be type of man, I think everybody should be the type of man who can speak to a child in a tender, loving, caring way, and then speak to a guy and in a motivating way without just having to curse all the time. So I think that aspect of it also limits their reach. I think it restricts their message. So, for example, Gary Vee, I think that sometimes he does share some good stuff, and some of these men's coaches, they do share some good stuff. But you think I'm going to send that to anybody that, like, you think I'm going to show my kid, hey, look at this inspirational entrepreneur that's got all these great ideas? You think I'm going to show my kids anything of Gary Vee? No. Because he has a filthy mouth, and he just doesn't know how to communicate in any other way than just this, like, amped up clickbait type cursing all the time. And so I think that...
Well, it seems disingenuous.
Yeah, when you have these profanity-laced clips, it's just like, dude, you've packaged this great message that you have sometimes. I think he comes up with way too much content, but like he packages sometimes really good messages in like a box of absolute garbage, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to deliver that to someone that I care about, or especially a child,
Even if
because
it's a good message,
even
the
if it's a good
garbage is,
message, yeah. And so
yeah.
when I look at men that I respect, they aren't going off on the handle cursing at people in these expletive-laced tirades. I don't know if you've ever seen this one guy named, he's a rich guy, he does like men's classes. His name is Dan Pena.
Yep.
That dude is classic, you know. He's just like, I don't care about you. Get the F out of here then. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm supposed to
If you can't afford my class for $20,000, then screw you. You're a bum.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
So it's kind of just like, all right, man, like that's not how I want to act. And a lot of times I think that people who act like that, it's almost like I think it shows little confidence or almost like a little man syndrome. So where they have to make their bark sound real loud to just try to scare you off, you know.
Yeah.
Or you don't care about, you're nothing, man. Like you don't know what that's going on. I'm gonna teach you what's going on. It's just like, dude, you don't need. I mean, you could be intense. I'm cool with the intensity, but you don't need to add in all the language and like amp up everything with the language that you do. So I don't know. Those
at least all the time. I mean, if you have some kind of like, crazy situation where or something happens or whatever else, like I understand a little bit
if someone
here and
is
there, but
but that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like if you're using the words all the time, then you have no depth of your vocabulary or how you act or how you speak.
Yeah.
If someone comes up to my wife and like pushes my wife or grab my wife, you better believe I'd be speaking in the most intense and impactful way that I possibly could to get that person's attention, to get away, or to back up or whatnot. So there's a time and a place. And when you're talking about, buying baseball cards at a yard sale like Gary Vee, that's not the time nor the place. So
from a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that one of my last things.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a real man who is respected should simply have to speak. Can speak calmly, and if people respect him, they will listen. He doesn't have to beg for attention and try to inflate the impact of his words by cussing all the time.
I like that.
How often does Jordan Peterson cuss?
I was just about to say.
Exactly.
Yeah, not very much.
Yeah.
Even like, even somebody who's maybe not as, I don't want to say professional, but I mean, how much does like Joe Rogan cuss? I mean,
I don't know.
Not that much.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I'm sure he does, but it's not in like everything. But, yeah, I think that's a great one. That's a great dislike. Something that could be improved, and some people might love that. I don't know, but I agree with you. Not my favorite.
Yep. So what you want to do? Likes now? What's one of your likes?
Yeah. So let's get a little positive here. One of my likes is, and we've talked about this several times on the podcast with a couple of different people, and even just in episodes that you and I have done together, kind of like overcoming challenges and things like that. So the I guess theme is if you fail forward, right? It is okay to fail. We had a guy on the podcast that said that there is no champion ever without scars. So you will get knocked down, but you can get back up. You can learn from your mistakes. You can learn from your failures. Don't let those control you. Don't say, oh, I messed up in this and it ruined a year of my life and now the next 50 years are ruined. No, learn from that mistake that made that year bad and then change the next 50 years. So that's one theme that it's okay to fail. In fact, it is better to fail than to never fail. Because then you learn, you become stronger, you can develop. And so that was a positive thing that I really, really liked.
Yeah, I like that too. I think one of the ones I like is, I like how there's a lot of attention to kind of men's issues, men's issues, the issues that fathers are having, or husbands. I recently heard someone say something that was like, men eternally have to, fathers and husbands and men have to eternally struggle, well, assuming you're in all three of those categories, with three things. One is wanting to spend as much time with their kids as they can, being the best father they can. But two, wanting to provide for them the most you can. So like making the most money that you possibly can. And then the third one is like focusing on yourself and like and improving yourself. And so like, and then you could even add in a fourth one there is like focusing on your relationship with your wife. I think they were including that in the first one with your wife and your kids. So it's like you got these three things that are pulling at you: your career, your family, and then your own personal self. And you have to allocate this finite time to all of them. And you want to just dedicate so much time to each one of these things individually so that you can be better. And I think that's...
But there's only so much time.
There's only so much time. And so I think that like stuff like that is like really cool because we have lots of... there's lots of podcasts out there. There's others. There's us. I think we do a great job of trying to motivate people to do better and also entertain at the same time. There's books, there's coaches and there's actual communities that where you can come together with other men, and we've had some people on that have communities of men that and fathers where they get together and they kind of talk about each other and talk about things that they're struggling with, and I think that's great that men have that opportunity to connect. Sometimes it's hard to find someone who's like-minded in your neighborhood, or just in your local church. So sometimes you have to go search elsewhere to find those folks, and I think that's cool that the men's movement out there allows for that.
Yeah. Completely agree. All right, so back to the dislikes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is an interesting one because I think it's important, but I don't always like how it's portrayed in men's improvement and men's health.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it seems like fitness is always tied to men's health. And it seems like, you got to be ripped, or you got to be jacked, or you got to be this, long distance ultra runner who's done 10 Ironmans, or you got to be like, this like incredible athlete to almost be, you got to be a NFL football player or whatever to be successful.
Or Navy
a lot of these,
SEAL, or like a
ex
like, special forces or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's always this fitness is kind of tied to, like men's improvement and men's health, which I think it is very important to be fit. And I can understand how seeing someone who is just incredibly jacked and ripped is going to be, is going to drive kind of respect, or it's going to make me feel like he works hard, or he's very disciplined. Like, I understand how it can make you feel that way, but you never know everybody's situation. That guy could be on freaking steroids and you don't even know,
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever else it might be, and some people are more intellectual. Some people are not physical, some people might be, have amazing philosophical ideas and, maybe be kind of pudgy. And so it's like, just because somebody,
but sometimes like in the men's movement, because they're not like, they don't have a 6-pack abs, it's like, well, this guy's useless.
Or because they're pudgy, it's like, oh, he's a lazy piece of crap. You can't trust him. You can't learn anything from him because he's carrying around a spare tire or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that, to me, like I said, I think fitness is important, and I constantly strive to become better and fitter, and I would love to be ripped. But sometimes, especially in the men's movement, it comes across as self-centered and egotistical.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I have one of my likes has something to do with that, but I'll share that in just a minute.
Okay.
So one of the other things that I dislike, and this one I'm actually gonna tell a story here. Maybe call out one of these guys that specifically that I just felt like exemplified this, and this is the humility and being open to new ideas is seen as a weakness. There's some influencers out there, men's coaches and others, who lack any humility at all. Their platforms, maybe at the beginning, start as educational platforms, but then they become a grandstand where they're just barking orders at everybody or shouting people down. And it no longer becomes what it once was. I think that sometimes, when they get pushback from people and then they just kind of stick to their guns, but they're just like, it just ends up to where they literally are the most prideful and egotistical thing you've ever seen.
They won't consider anything that anyone else has to say because they're right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to know your values and stick to them. And we talk about our core creed beliefs all the time. And if
but they evolve.
Yeah. But if you shut somebody down who has a different opinion than you, then you're closing yourself off to potential growth. We have all kinds of people on the podcast, and some of them I agree with, some people I don't agree with. We've had people on where they'll say something, and I'm just like, that's an interesting thought, or I'll need to think about that. Because, if somebody says something that's different than what I believe, I'm not going to immediately just be like, that's absolute BS. No, sometimes it takes time to think through things. And so oftentimes maybe that's why I don't push back so hard on someone who's sharing on the podcast with the guests that we have, because I'm trying to consider what they have to say, because I think I can learn a lot more about what other people have to say than just me running my mouth.
Yeah.
And so
that's for sure.
So I think that, although that's kind of ironic coming from me doing a podcast right now, but we're sharing things. I think that me sharing knowledge is also good. And anyway, so there was a specific situation where I'll share a couple things before I share that. So they say that not to take advice from people that aren't where you want to be. And so, it's like, why would I get a men's coach who's the most prideful person on earth? Or why would I learn from someone or follow someone on social media who's literally the most prideful person and would never listen to any other opinions? It's like, this person's obviously not that informed if they won't listen to anybody else except for themselves. So I want to live more of a Socrates type life where I ask questions and then I ask follow-up questions. I mentioned Jordan Peterson once before, but when he gets questioned by people shouting him down in the crowd or whatever, what does he usually do? He says, ask your question and let's talk about it. Or I've seen several videos of him just kind of hanging out at a kind of a happy hour type thing, and someone will come up and just start shouting at him. And he goes up to him and he starts having a conversation with him. And it starts talking with them and understanding where they're coming from, and then asking them questions. He's not shouting them down. It's just he has class and he's going about it in a way that is refined, and I like that. So back now to my story. So there's an influencer out there. This guy's name is Ian Went, and I actually bought a couple of his stuff. He started a clothing company that just says Patriot on the shirts. I like the shirts. They say Patriot. I'm a Patriot. And so I was like, hey, this guy's clothing is pretty cool, and followed him. And he talked a lot about you could call them conspiracy theories. I don't know if they were that conspiracy theories. A lot of it's just about red pill versus blue pill type of stuff and New World Order type of stuff. So I mean, it was entertaining to follow him. And then like we actually, I liked his clothes so much. I was like, hey, he started like an affiliate program with his clothing brand, and I was like, hey, maybe we could, be affiliates, and we could pitch some of his clothing on our podcast. And so we actually signed up for the program, got approved and everything, and we were kind of in the process of getting to understand like just how it works and everything. And he posted something on his Facebook or his social media, Instagram, and he was like, I think it was a picture of Klaus Schwab, the leader of the World Economic Forum. And like this guy, he used to, at one point in the past, he had like been educating people and like telling people, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? But like his tone really started to shift recently. And instead of being like education, it was kind of like his comment on this thing was like, if you don't know who this is, then you're an idiot. And I just commented on his video. I was like, hey man, can we get back to where you're like educating people instead of just insulting people? And this guy like literally went off the handle. It was like I had insulted him, his family, his wife, his children. He literally took my comments, and then he came back and was like, really ripped into me. And I was like, hey man, like, I'm a big fan of your stuff. I like your clothing line. I am just saying, like, if you could just go back to where you were educating people instead of assuming that we're idiots if we don't know what you're talking about, like, that's the Ian that I want to talk to. And he like kept ripping into me. He's like, I can't even believe you're still here. You're just going to be like one of those followers that unfollows me and then follows me back in like 6 months. And you're not going to get what the stuff that I'm posting anywhere else. And you're just like, I was like, are you serious right now? And he literally took pictures of the comments that I was commenting and posted it in his stories and was like, look at this freaking idiot. Like, what an idiot naysayer, like trying to, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he doesn't even know who this person is. And I'm like, are you serious?
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm like, you're like, this guy is literally like the most prideful, egotistical guy.
Pompous
idiot that I've ever, like, I was shocked. And that's why I kind of like stuck around in the comments and was just like, this is unbelievable. Like, I can't even like believe that you're acting like this. And then he just is like, I can't believe you're even still here. And then he blocked me. And then so I was like, dude, screw that guy, man. And what was funny is that he actually went on the Order of Man podcast with Ryan Mickler. And his whole thing was basically him just talking about how that whole episode was basically him. He's like, yeah, people try to like come at me for all kinds of stuff, but I don't care about what anybody has to say. I don't care what my friends have to say. I know what's right. Basically, he went up there and said that he didn't care about what anybody had to say. He didn't care about what his friends had to say. He didn't care about what anybody online had to say. And that I think he might have even said he didn't care about what his wife had to say. Maybe he probably does. But like, it's like, dude, if you don't listen to anybody except for yourself, then like you're gonna go astray, man. And like his pride was so his pride was so on display that it was almost like disgusting to watch. And I was shocked at that episode, and I was like, yeah, this is par for the course for this guy, man. But then he goes on later to say like, oh, I just think it's so important to learn new things and be open to new ideas. Basically just talking about everybody else who needed to learn from him. So I was like, this is hilarious. My wife always says that I should have seen this coming when he was one of the keynote speakers at AlphaCon in Salt Lake City. So she's like, anybody who calls himself an alpha is not an alpha. And he was
AlphaCon, huh?
And he was a keynote speaker. So I was like, oh, this is where the alpha males come to speak. And that dude, his head was so full. I mean, he was basically his feet raised off of the ground because he was so full of hot air.
Yeah.
Anyway, that pride and lack of seeing humility and openness to new ideas, influencers that see that as a weakness, I hate that. And a lot of times you do see that in this male influencer space. female probably as well, but specifically a couple of experiences that I've had, it's just like, I know what's right, and screw everybody else in the entire world. And it's like, okay, dude. So, anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I remember you telling me about all that story. It's just like, dude.
It's like, yeah, dude, we're not telling this dude stuff anymore.
Yeah. I do still have his his sweatshirt that he gave me, and it's comfortable. So
yeah, that's allowed. I'll allow that.
I'm still a patriot. So
still a patriot. Just don't support that guy.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one. Just being humble enough to just interact with people like civilly.
Yeah,
is important.
I mean, if someone had commented that on something that I had posted, I probably wouldn't respond. I mean, there was hundreds of comments on this dude's thing, but he specifically responded. I probably wouldn't respond, but I would think about what that person said, and I'm like, am I?
Or maybe
that?
or maybe respond with like a link, like an educational link or something like that. Like, hey, here's some more about this guy.
Yeah, maybe I would definitely want to respond the way that he did. I would probably just maybe think about it, and I don't know. I think that sometimes maybe he was in the mode of just like dealing with lots of. Oh, another thing that he did. I have to mention this. That was like the biggest, like, asshole move that you can make. And I'm using this appropriately. I'm cursing appropriately because this dude really was one. So he said in his interview on The Order of Man that he'll get these blue check Instagram folks that will like his stories or give him a thumbs up on his stories that he shares. And he's like, I'll go to these people's pages, and unless they've shared my stuff, I'll block them right away. Because if they're not sharing my stuff, they obviously aren't fighting the good fight. So I'll block them right away.
Jeez.
He's like, I won't even talk to him. I'll just block him. Like, so they'll be like, hey, man, keep up the good work. Or they'll send him a thumbs up and like a message or response to his stories, and he'll just block them. Because they're not sharing the message that he's sharing. And I'm like, wow, man, the arrogance on that guy to do that. So
he really showed them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you think you're the only one on the internet talking about this stuff? Give me a break.
Yeah. All right. Well,
something that you like.
It might seem like our dislikes are heavier than our likes here on the scale, but what I will say is that we're just more passionate about the things that we want to see change.
Yeah. Yes.
Jared and I are all about improvement and where the world can improve.
Yeah, like sometimes when I think about like what we are, who we the way that we are on the podcast and how we do our podcast is kind of, I mean, there's a lot of overlap with some other guys, and we try to do those things. But the things that we're talking about that we dislike here, those are things that we want to steer clear of. And that's why sometimes when we invite people, that's why when we do invite people onto our podcast, we tell them not to cuss, because we want them to, if they can't express their opinions and their message in a format that isn't them cursing all the time, it's like, dude, then your message is not worth hearing, man. And so we kind of do force people into these things, and we've had a couple of guests, we've had to edit out a couple of things. We've only had really maybe one or two that kind of really gone awry, but we would just remind them, and then they're usually like, oh, okay. So
yeah. I'd say typically they try to be respectful.
Yeah.
So my next I'm gonna kind of combine a couple, but one was men gathering together. Whether that's at a men's retreat, or whether it's getting together to work out together, or maybe you play on a softball team together, or maybe whatever else, maybe you go out to dinner. I know a couple of the guys we've talked with, they have these kind of men's nights or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And actually my father-in-law was just telling me that they have kind of started this thing in at church, where kind of all of the older aged gentlemen, right, in the congregation. Well, they'll all go out one night a month and kind of have like a men's dinner. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think a lot of times that's encouraged, because if you can foster an environment where men can get together and they can talk openly without fear of being judged or shamed or whatever else, which is not easy to do. Um, I think that could be massively beneficial, because a lot of times as men, we don't talk about our issues very much. We don't talk about our problems or what we struggle with personally, or our relationships or whatever else.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, hey, how you doing? Good. What's up? Yeah, let's just hang out or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think if you could create an environment of where people could talk and relate to each other, it's like, oh man, I was struggling with that 6 months ago, or man, I'm struggling with that same thing with my kids or my wife or my, my dad or whatever it might be. So I think that is a cool thing within the men's sphere, is kind of the opportunity to get together and to help each other become better, help each other grow. I mean,
Yeah.
Jared, I mean,
Yeah.
you and I have even thought about on the podcast doing some sort of like, men's retreats or something like that. And how can we, just kind of both, do, spiritually, financially, physically, like do all these different things to kind of emotionally to help just kind of bring everybody together to make us better.
Yeah, we've thought about doing events. I think it'll be fun. So yeah, I totally think that that's one of the great ones, that bringing communities together, of guys together, to do that. That's one thing I like about jiu-jitsu, actually, is that you actually get a weird slice of society. You get a lot of guys and kids who come together and have this common goal to learn jiu-jitsu. But I mean, we have like in my class, there's like a 16-year-old kid who's same rank as me. And when we roll, it's just the same. We're like the same, And then there's a guy who's like a grandpa, and he's got a 12-year-old grandson. And then so there's this wide range of people and ages and their careers and everything. So you really get an interesting slice of kind of your local community. That is an interesting thing, because everybody's on the same playing ground, even though everybody's different ages. Well, I say same playground, but I mean, there are ranks within jiu-jitsu. But I mean, everybody's there generally trying to get better and trying to learn a specific craft. And everybody's different, ages and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So what's I know you kind of mentioned a like earlier about fitness that kind of related to that one.
Yeah, so I think that one thing that you said, there was some downsides to fitness. I totally agree with that. But I think that there are some upsides. I think that there is such a focus on getting your body into a good state and just being overall physically healthy. There's a saying that says, a healthy man has a million desires, but a sick man has one, and that's to be healthy. And I think that's so true. If you've ever been like hurt or sick,
I like that for sure.
the only one thing that you want is to be healthy and be in a good state again. And so unless we get ourselves to that point, unless you get to the point where you are healthy and happy and your body is tuned up. I mean, you don't have to have an 8-pack, but as long as you're working your body, you're exercising, then you can start to focus on more. I think that getting your body tuned up and through exercises or vitamins, getting proper sleep, maybe even doing cold plunges or the Wim Hof breathing or saunas or red light therapy or looking at sunlight, getting sun in your eyes or grounding. We've talked about all those things on this podcast.
Yep.
And how all of those things can really help you be healthier. And when you are healthier and your body's kind of in tune, it takes discipline to get there. And if you can have the discipline to get there, then you can also have the discipline to follow. It follows closely with other areas of your life. You're going to be a better disciplined father. You're going to be more intentional about the things that you do. And I think that discipline is one of the core tenets that every man should have. And when I think about discipline, a young boy has no discipline, but a man has the ability to control himself and guide his life through thoughts, actions, and habits to what he desires to have. And so that was a quote that I made up that I felt like was really inspiring. That's my quote of the day, quote of this episode.
There you go.
But exercise is a way to build discipline. And so I think that because there's so much out there with the men's movement, there's so many things that I didn't even know about before that I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should try this, or maybe I should try that, or maybe this will help me, or maybe this can help with this problem that I'm having, or help me feel more energized, or what have you. So I think it's that aspect of it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think just overall health and fitness in general, and just bettering yourself. I mean, from personal experience, I can say that it does help in all other aspects of your life. So I completely agree. On the other side of that, you have to be jacked to be an influencer, or to be a motivational speaker, influencer, or whatever you want to say. Yeah, that's maybe to the extreme, but I think 100% that health and fitness is very important.
Yeah. So that was one that I liked. Any more that you like or dislike?
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw out a couple more likes, and these are just kind of short ones. So I think there's 2 people on the podcast that have talked about this kind of theme when it comes to interactions with others. And so the theme is so one guy he talked about seeking truth in all situations, right? I think that's kind of goes a little bit with what you were saying, Jared, and I went back and actually listened to a lot of the personal creed comments of a lot of our the people that have been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so really kind of seeking truth in all situations. That goes back to what you were saying, is being humble and being willing to listen and understand and at least like hear other people's opinions. And then the second part was respond rather than react. That has, since the first time I heard it, respond rather than react.
Yeah.
That is something that I personally have been working on, especially with my kids, is because I am historically, habitually, maybe, more inclined to just react. I react quickly to things, or I have so in the past. Ever since, I'd say over the past couple of years, since I've heard that, is I'm a lot more conscious on responding to situations versus just reacting on a whim.
Yeah.
Example. 2 days ago, I was playing Risk with my kids, with my 2 boys. They are 9 and 6. Mm-hmm. And I was playing Risk with them, and I was, let's just say, winning.
Dominating. You got all of Asia, Europe, and Australia, and you're like, all right, guys, let's play.
Yeah. So actually, I think I had all of Asia, I had all of Australia, half of Asia. I had all of Africa, all of South America, and half of North America, and then the two kids are in the other ones. And so my for some reason, the 2 boys, they kept fighting back and forth from Iceland to Greenland, and there was just like these 2 countries, and they would just dump all their guys on there, and they would just kill each other, while I was just like, coming up the rear.
Yeah.
And my one son, my 9-year-old, he started crying, and they were both crying, and I was trying to explain to him, be super patient and everything else, and then my 9-year-old was like, well, I'm just gonna be done playing. I'm like, dude, just finish the game. Like, let's finish. Like, you start something to finish it. And then I started attacking, and then his brother started attacking him and took some of his countries, and he was just so fed up that he just grabbed he had a bunch of guys on these countries, and he just grabbed a bunch of the guys off of the thing and was like, I'm done. And he put him in the thing. And I was frustrated at this point, and so I said, fine. I said, we are not playing. I said, I am not playing Risk with you for the rest of this trip. Right. That was just like a complete like reaction that I had. He was just like, I don't want to play anymore. You grabbed his pieces off the board. And I said, fine, I'm done. I am not playing this game with you for the rest of the trip. And so like we cleaned out the board or whatever. And then I went over and I was sitting on the couch. And I was like, man, like I want to play Risk again. Like, I mean, they did really good for the first hour and a half that we played. It was just the last little while. And so I was sitting over the couch, and he came over to me like 30 minutes later, and he was like, Dad, I'm sorry how I acted. And, you know, I'm sorry that I, you know, took my pieces off the board, and I was really having fun. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, what do I do now? Because I already told him that I'm not playing with you for the rest of the trip. And then, you know, but that was a very sincere apology that he initiated himself. And I was like, but at the same point, I can't go back on what I said, because then I look like a chump, and then he's never going to listen to me. And so, you know, I ended up working it out with him to where he made a PowerPoint presentation about all of the countries that fought in World War II, and his two most interesting battles, that if he did that and presented it to me, then he could earn Risk back. And he did it, and it was great. And so, you know, I was just like, how could I have better responded in that situation versus reacted? You know, I could have been like, hey, bud, I know this is hard. You're struggling. Maybe let's take a break. Let's come back. You know, there's so many other things I could have done than just be like, nope, you're done. I'm done. It's over. And so, you know, learning experience for me as well, but something I've been trying to do.
Yeah. It's a tough game to play with little kids, because you're attacking other people. You're like attacking other players, and it's not just like chance or anything like that. So you can easily target people, and then people get offended or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and then we played again 3 days later, and the both of them ganged up against me, and they wiped me off the map.
Nice. There you go. Hermanos, la familia es todo.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was you know, respond versus react was something that I've heard not only on our podcast, but I've heard, you know, on social media and everything else. It's an important thing.
Cool.
So,
anything else?
Yeah.
Rapid fire. Any other ones?
Well, I had this other one that was interesting, that we had a guy named Aaron Boone, Millennial Manliness, on the podcast.
We're going way back, yeah.
Yeah, he had 4 P's of fatherhood. Pursue. So pursue a relationship with your wife, pursue a relationship with your kids, provide, protect, and partner. The 4 P's. I was kind of like that. I wrote it down on a sticky note, and I've got it. The 4 P's. Something I kind of like.
Nice.
The last one, I don't want to end on a dislike, but I guess I have to. My last one, I think it kind of corresponds with with one of your dislikes, Jared, is I am, my wife and I are both night people. And, you know, all these, you know, influencers or these motivational speakers are like, oh, you got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and hit the weights and meditate for 6 hours and do this and do that.
Or
you know?
2
It's
o'clock
like,
in the morning.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I don't want to be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. If I'm awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's because I haven't gone to bed yet from the night before. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not a morning person, but, you know, if I get up at 7 or 8 o'clock, like, that's okay for me. And because I probably went to bed at 2. And so it's just kind of like the whole thing of like, in order to be successful, you have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That's something for me. It's just like, dude, people are different, right? People are built different. Some people are night people. Some people are morning people. You know, who is it? Like, Mark Wahlberg is like, yeah, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, dude, but you go to bed at 6:30. or he wakes up at 2:00. It's like goes to bed at 6:30. It's like, dude, that's like the whole evening that I get to spend with my kids and everything else. I mean, he's loaded, so he probably spends more time during the day with his kids. But
Yeah.
yeah. So you don't have to wake up at 4:00 in the morning to be successful.
Yeah.
I would say don't probably sleep in until noon or 2:00, and that can foster laziness and that can hinder your success. But yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a morning person, so I have a little bit of a different perspective, but I can understand how that would be frustrating. And I don't think it's necessary to wake up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I think that kind of goes back to my other thing. It's like this shock and awe tactic. It's like, I wake up at 1 in the morning. No, I wake up at 12 at night. Look how extreme I am. It's like, I never sleep. It's like, it's like, I run a marathon every morning. And it's just like, what? Like, what is the stand? I've literally heard someone who does that. And I'm like, the standard here is like getting so ramped up that like everyone's trying to one up each other. That's like literally these guys feel like if they want to be a coach or like lead men, they have to be some kind of superhuman, like Guinness World Book of Records holder type. It's just like, oh, okay, but that's all that's not needed.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I do agree that a good morning routine is important, but probably not.
No, I agree. I agree that a morning routine is important, but whether that morning routine starts at 5:00 in the morning or starts at 7:00 in the morning, I don't know if that is so important.
Yeah, yeah.
What about you? Any other likes or dislikes?
I think you hit on some good ones. I've been thinking a lot about those dislikes, and just like, because I see that so prevalent out there. I mean, the things I like, there's so many things that I like, and like we talk about stuff like that all the time. But sometimes it's just like, this thing or that thing is frustrating to me, and so I think that's why I spent a little bit more time like explaining my thought process and reasoning behind some of those dislikes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, whether you agree with our dislikes or you agree with our likes, there's a lot to learn, whether it's from our podcast, from our guests, from social media out there. And what I will say is that not everything is for you. Not everything I hear is for me. Mm-hmm. And something that might resonate with me might, set an alarm off for Jared. I mean, I would say for you and I, we're relatively similar and agree on a lot of things, but and what might work for you or for the listener out there, maybe that, David Goggins, hardcore, don't be lazy, don't be fat, don't be whatever, might work for you, and it might make you angry, and it might, I don't know how many, Jared and I haven't had tons of negative comments, but, I can read the negative comments and then listen back to them and it'd motivate me.
Yeah.
So I think there's always room for growth. Right. I think sometimes when people, especially influencers, I mean, just think about like Tony Robbins or whatever. I mean, he's got a big head, man. I think he's literally has a big head, but figuratively as well. I mean, a lot of these things too. It's probably hard. I just watched a documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger on Netflix, and it's really good. But it is hard to be humble when everyone is literally just praising your name.
Yeah.
If you got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of followers and people that would just, at a drop of a hat, do anything that you asked, it would probably be hard to stay humble and to listen to what other people have to say because you're, so successful or whatever it might be. But
yeah,
what I will say
Gary Vee
is,
right now, he's like, well, there's a reason why I have millions of followers and I'm a multimillionaire and you guys are just a small podcast. It's like, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but like,
all right. I'd say let us have you on our podcast and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, he could not cuss and we'd probably have to boot him or something.
Yeah, or we'll beep every single one of his things and then it'll make him look bad because he'll just be like, yes, beep, beep, yes, beep, no, beep, beep, yes, beep.
Yeah,
you didn't even hear what I said. It was like, yeah, because we just,
you can't communicate without cursing. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Well, for all the listeners out there, hopefully you got something out of this. Kind of be careful on who you follow and who you attach to. I would say do some research into some of these people, some of these gurus. Be weary of gurus, but at the same point, there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of people that have, like I said at the beginning, they've tried lots of things and done lots of things. So sometimes it can be wise to listen to what they have to say.
Yep. Absolutely. And thanks for joining, and let's build that creed together.
All right, let's do it.